So today I would love to show you how I do my heel flap and gusset toe-up socks. By no means did I create a heel flap. Like, this is not an original idea. I know other people have made toe-up heel flap and gusset socks, but this is just how I figured out how to do it on my own. I haven't looked at anybody else's, and I'd love to share it with you. This tutorial is probably not great for someone who's never made socks before, because I'm not going to go over things like your stitch count or how to make socks in general fit very super well. I'm just going to talk about this type of sock, and I'm going to assume that you have sock knitting experience for this video. You might want to do a toe-up, heel flap, and gusset sock if you really just like to do toe-up socks. For me, I don't mind cuff-down socks, but what I really do mind sometimes is when I have a limited amount of yarn and I'm kind of playing yarn chicken. I like to split my yarn in half and do my socks 2 at a time and then just stop when I run out of yarn. Especially since I'm a person who, if I'm making socks out of one color, I a lot of times use less than 60 grams. And then if I'm making them out of 2 colors, I might try to squeeze out a pair of socks where I only have 50 or 40 grams in my main color and another 10 or 20 in some kind of contrast color. Maybe I'll have to do some stripes or something, but I really like to squeeze as much as I can out of my socks, and I find that that works best with toe up. I also find that this is my preferred heel, especially if I'm working with a chunkier yarn, which I also find that I'm more likely to be short on yarn for just one skein if I'm doing like a DK weight or a worsted weight sock. For this sock in this tutorial, I am using these absolutely insane colors in a way that I think these colors are beautiful. But usually this is not my go-to method. I've just put each of the sections in different colors, so it's easiest for you to see. This is Emma's yarn, and it's the Simply Spectacular DK Smalls. And the base is 25% superwash merino and 25% nylon. I'm sorry, 75% superwash merino and 25% nylon. Just add salt is that lovely green color right there. The blue color is Zuni. That's what my gusset increases are made out of. My main sections, my normal just stockinette, plain stockinette sections are an 80s Rewind, which I think is a really cool colorway. And then Barbie Girl is what my toe and my heel turn are made out of. This is not the greatest sock yarn in my personal opinion. If I'm making DK weight socks, I want them to be super duper warm and cozy, and this yarn is just really super wash. I look forward to making a top out of it someday, something maybe with negative ease, because it is very, very, very soft. And even people in my family who have some kind of wool sensitivity typically have zero complaints about this yarn. So it's very soft. I just don't think it's the warmest, but I love the colors, and that's what I'm using today. The other thing that I'm using is for these DK weight socks, I'm using a US size 3 needle, so a 3.25 millimeter needle. I am using Magic Loop 40 inch, and I think that this would work with any kind of needle technique that you use. Once you get the toe going, the toe we're going to do as a Turkish cast on. You, of course, can use your own toe, but if you want to learn a Turkish cast on, that's what I'm going to do, and I'm going to show you how to do it. And that typically works better on either 2 circs or Magic Loop. So the other things that I would like you to know is that all of our increases are going to be made with lifted increases. So if you don't know how to do those yet, I'll show you. And then our heel churn right here is going to be made out of twin stitches that are also kind of lifted increases. It's like combining a lifted increase and a twin stitch. So that's the most crucial part to, I think, how I do my toe up socks. And then I have my heel flap here, which I've worked in Eye of Partridge. I made a mistake up here, but that's okay. I worked that in Eye of Partridge. So basically, I staggered my knit one, slip one. You could just do it in stockinette, but one of the reasons why I really like a heel flap and gusset is because this heel flap makes for a nice chunky part of your sock, and I really like to wear mine in shoes, so that's why I like it. And then for the cuff right here, I just did a 1x1 rib and then did a tubular bind off with a couple rows of double knitting. I will link a video for that because honestly I have nothing new to add to that, and the tutorial that I have found to do that with is just fantastic, so I'll link that. But here we go, let's get started with the toe. I am going to do my toe in this lovely color called Barbie Girl. I'm going to work a wedge toe, and I'm going to start with a Turkish cast on. So to start that, I'm going to do a slip knot. I'm going to put it on my needle, and I'm going to put my needles together, but my slip knot is going to stay on the bottom right there. Okay, so then I'm going to take my working yarn, and I'm going to wrap it around my needles. Oops, sorry. I'm going to wrap it around my needle 8 times because I want to end up with 16 total stitches, 8 on the front, 8 on the back. So I'm going to wrap my yarn 8 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This could be a lot closer. It really doesn't matter. If you get them closer together, they'll end up being tighter. I'm not too worried about it. And I'm going to just double check that I have 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Sorry, it's hard to see through the camera. I'm going to take my bottom needle out. And you can see that all my stitches are staying on my cord and my top needle right here. And I'm going to knit into each of those. I'm sorry, let me show you that again. Sorry if it's blurry. This is just on my cell phone. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that is only the first half the cast on. I need to work the stitches that are on the bottom as well. So I'm going to flip my work over, and then I am going to get it on my next needle. You'll see that it starts with the slip knot. That's what it's supposed to do. We're actually just going to bloop, take the slip knot off, not even worry about it. While you're working these, you might want to tug a little bit on that working yarn, make sure it doesn't get caught. And I'm going to work the 8 stitches on my back needle. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then this 8th one is twisted, so I'm gonna knit into the back loop. 8, there we go. Okay, so that is our cast on. And if you notice, I have my tail is on the left side, not the right side. Just to make my life a little easier, I'm gonna take one of my stitch markers and I'm gonna pop it in to the right side, so I know that that's my beginning of round. The next row that I'm going to do is just a plain knit round, so I'm going to knit all of these stitches. And typically, when I cast on stitches for my toe, between half the stitches and a third of the total amount of stitches I want is pretty good for me. I don't like having a super tiny toe, but other than that, I don't really have a big method for how many stitches I cast on at the beginning. Just like around a third to the half of my desired stitch count is what I cast on. So I casted on 16, and I will eventually have 40 stitches. So that's what I'm trying to increase to. This is DK weight yarn again, so not like I would do that for fingering weight socks. All right, back to the beginning. Here's where things get interesting, because now we need to start to do increases. Because our lifted increases are going to be important later, I'm going to show them to you now, and that's how I'm going to shape my toe. I think the only way to do lifted increases is to do a wedge toe. I don't think you can do them row after row. So if you like a rounded toe, this might not be the best method for you, but I will show you how to do the stitches now anyways. And I am always going to work the first and the last stitch on every needle as a knit stitch, and I'm going to increase right before or after those stitches. So I should have on an increased round 4 stitches, new stitches, increased stitches. So I'm going to knit my first stitch, and then I'm going to increase. So what I have on my left needle right now is the row that I just finished knitting. Below that, I have the row before that. I want to pick up that right stitch, the right leg of that stitch, and put it on my needle. I'm going to keep my thumb up here so that stitch doesn't make the one on the row on top of it come undone. And I'm going to knit into it. And now I have a new stitch. I'm going to put a stitch marker right here because it just makes it easier for me to count my increases. And I'm going to knit until the last stitch. That was a right leaning increase. Now we're going to do a left leaning increase. Left leaning increases can look a little tricky because you're doing it from your right needle. And on our right needle right now, we have stitches from the round that we're doing right now. And then under that, we have this, which is the from the row before. We want to go into the stitch before that. So I want to pick up the left leg of that stitch, put it on the needle, keep my finger right here so it doesn't go away, and then I'm going to knit that stitch. I'm going to do the same thing on my back needle. You always do a right leaning increase and then a left leaning increase. I mean, you could do it the other way around. Your increases would just look different, and the look that I'm going for has a right and then left. Again, I'm going to knit my first stitch. And then because I'm doing a right leaning increase, I'm going to go into the stitch below the one that's on my needle. Boop, put that on my needle and then knit it, just like that. Knit that stitch that I just went into and then continue to knit all the way until I get to that last stitch. For a left leaning increase, I have the row that I'm currently working, I have the stitch from the row before, and now I want to go into the stitch from the row before that. Put it on my needle and knit it. Oh, stitch mark in the way. Okay. And this is a wedge toe, so I'm going to knit the next round. Just plain knit, no increases. If I tried to increase into this stitch, well, this is the same leg that I went into before, so you would just keep stretching it and stretching it and stretching it. And so I don't know of a way to do right and left leaning increases and do a wedge toe. I generally prefer a wedge toe, but just for teaching this today, I generally prefer a rounded toe, and I don't know how you would do right and left leaning increases with a rounded toe. We're going to use these stitches that are really, really similar to these lifted increases when we get to the heel flap. Actually, before the heel flap, when we're at the heel turn. It's where those are going to make the most sense. And we'll use them on the gusset too, just so you can see them again and get used to them. Okay, so I did one row of just knits, and now I'm going to do another row of increases. Awesome. So knit into the first stitch, and then this is the stitch that I want to increase in. The row on top is the row that I just knit, my plain knit row. The row before that is what I want to use to create my increase. Boop. Okay, now I have 3 stitches over here. Remember, this first stitch was here to begin with, so far I've done 2 increases. So once I'm done with this row, I'll have done a total of 8 new stitches, which should mean I should have 12 stitches on each needle. Oh, sorry, I'll talk you through this one again. On the top, I have my new row, then I have the stitch from the row before, then I have the stitch that I want to use to do my left leaning increase. I really hope I've been knitting on the camera this whole time. It's so hard to watch what I'm doing and knit. I'm sorry. Okay. Knit my first stitch, pick up that leg. Yeah, I don't think you could see that. Let's try that again. Pick up that leg, keep knitting across, I don't know if you caught me doing that left leaning increase. Oops, but it happened, I promise. Okay, and now I'm going to do another row of knit. I'm going to keep alternating in this knit, increase, knit, increase pattern until I have my desired number of stitches. So I'll keep going until I have 20 on my front needle, 20 on my back needle, which should give me 40 stitches. I'll knit a couple rows plain and I'll attach my new yarn and start to do my foot. Okay, so now I have 20 stitches on the back, 20 stitches on the front. I have 40 stitches. Technically, my toe is done, but realistically, I don't like my toe to be that short. I like to have a couple extra rows after my toe before I switch colors. If you're not switching colors, it doesn't matter. I even like to leave that much before I start my stitch pattern. So I'm going to do like 5 extra rows. Okay, so I've finished those 5 extra rows, and now I'm going to start my just normal foot section right here. And this is in the color 80s Rewind. I'm going to attach my new color, and I'm just going to knit around and around in circles. Nothing fancy here, quite honestly. Okay, you get the gist. New color, whatever. I'm sure you've done that before. If you haven't, I'm sorry, this is the wrong tutorial for you. But let's talk about real quick how long this plain section is going to need to be knit. So this section is worked with no increases or decreases. And technically it includes those 5 rows that I did on the toe. So I like a longer, deeper gusset right here. And the longer the gusset you want to do, or the more increases you want to do, the more you're going to need to knit on this blue section right here. So the increases, you can see my nice little increase line right there. And the less you'll need to knit of the foot. On the flip side, the less increases you want, the more the foot that you're going to need to knit. So for this blue section, when we get there, I will show you again how to increase, but I did lifted increases here again. And I increased my stitch count by 50% on my back needle, 25% over here, and then 25% on the other side. So if I had 40 stitches, I end up putting 20 more stitches onto my back needle, 10 more right here, and then 10 more on that other side. And that's what I like. You could go as little as a third. So if you had a stitch count of 60, 30 on this needle, 30 on that needle, you could do 10 instead, and that would be more for like a true fingering weight sock, like an actual sock weight yarn. And this is where you get to play a lot and figure out what you like. Just like you play with your stitch count, you'll also kind of play with how long you want this gusset increase to be, and you'll figure it out that way. Again, if you've done a Flegel heel before, you probably already know where you like to start your gusset increases. So I'm going to get going on my foot, and I will come back when I'm ready to do my gusset increases just to show you how to do those again. Our step after that is going to be our heel flap, our heel turn, our heel flap, and then foot, cuff, bada bing, bada boom. Here we go. Okay, so now I have finished the stockinette foot of my sock, and I'm going to move on to the gusset increases that you see right here. This blue color I'm using is Zuni. What I've done is I've already attached my the yarn that I'm going to use for the gusset decreases. And how you do these gusset decreases is you just knit the front needle like you would normal, but on our back needle, on the back of our sock, we're going to do some increases, and that's what makes this part of the sock bigger. So all these stitches are going to end up on the back of your needle. And I'm going to do lifted increases again. I actually think that they will be even easier to see because I'm using a different yarn for this row. So instead of knitting one like we did on the toe, you could still do that, but for mine, I am just immediately making an increase on the back needle. So again, I don't want the stitch of the last row. I want the one from the the stitch from the row before. I'm going to pick up the right leg. I'm going to do a right leaning increase. Then I'm going to, whoa, that's why you got to hold on to that stitch sometimes. Okay, here's how you fix this. I'm going to put my needle back in, and I'm just going to, whoop, lift it over. It's fixed now. Okay, so I'm going to knit to the other side of the sock. And then on the other side of the sock, once I get to the last stitch, we're going to do a left leaning increase. All right. So to do this left leaning increase, I don't want the stitch from the row that I'm doing right now. I don't want the stitch from the row I just finished. I want the stitch that's underneath that. It's going to be this one right here. I'm going to pick that leg up, put it on my needle, knit it. Awesome. So now I have 2 extra stitches on this needle. And again, the way I like to do this is I like to double the number that's on my back needle or increase my total stitch count by about 50%. So anywhere from like a third to 50% would be good. I think I'm going to put a stitch marker right here so I can see how many increases I've done. So I'm going to end up, I have 40 stitches on my needle now, 20 stitches on my each needle, and I just did 2 increases. So I'm going to keep going until I get a total of 40 stitches on my back needle, or 20 stitches increased, 10 on this side and 10 on this side. And after your increased row, just like we did on the toe, you're going to knit a plain round. So it goes knit, increase, increase. And then I will come back and show you how to do this heel turn, which is what we're going to do next. Okay, so I have finished all of my gusset increases. You can see that my front needle right here has the same amount of stitches on it. It still has 20 stitches on it. My back needle right here has a ton of stitches on it. It has twice as many. It has 40 stitches now. So I've increased my total stitch count by 50%, or I've doubled my back needle. And I kept this stitch marker on here so that I could see my increases while I was working, so I didn't get lost or confused. And now it's time to work the heel turn right here. So what this heel turn does is it makes a nice little cup for your heel to go in. If you just started to do your heel flap, it might sit weird on the back of your heel. If we took this out, it might sit weird. It would probably be pretty wide and blocky, so that's why we want to put this heel turn in here. This is where you kind of have to think ahead. Eventually, when I work this heel flap, I want 20 stitches on it, which is the amount of stitches that I originally started with on my back needle, and it's the number that's going to match the needle on the front of my sock. This is your heel flap for a cuff down sock is typically just as wide as, or just as many stitches as you typically have on your back needle or on the back half of your sock. So I don't know why you would want to change that. I don't know if there are any benefits to changing that stitch count, but from everything that I've seen, this heel flap should be the amount of stitches that you want on the back side of your sock or your back needle, or however you want to think about it. So I'm going for 20 stitches back here. It's important to think about for my heel turn, because to make this heel turn, I'm going to work some short rows. And while I'm working those short rows, I'm also going to increase. So I'm going to work to one side, I'm going to add a stitch. I'm going to work to the other side, add a stitch. I'm going to work one less stitch this way, add a stitch, work this way, one less stitch, add, and I just zigzag, and every time I turn around, I'm going to add another stitch. The way I'm going to do that is a combination of twin stitches and make lifted increases. I will show you that in just a second, but let's talk about how to get that heel turn started. So I am going to take this marker out because I don't need it anymore, and I'm going to put it in the middle of my heel. So I know that was 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Okay, so the middle of my heel, It's going to be right there. Okay, and I know that my desired amount of stitches to end up with is going to be 20. I know that every time I'm going to turn around, I'm going to have to make an extra stitch. And I know that I actually want to leave a couple stitches in the middle unworked so it doesn't get too big. So I'm going to look at that here, and I'm going to say I want 4 stitches total to be left, not necessarily unworked, but I'm not going to increase there. Otherwise, it would get too pointy. If this was, I've done 1 stitch on each side, so a total of 2 on other GK weight socks before. So that would work too. For a fingering weight sock, I've done 4 stitches in the middle left unworked, or I've done even 6 before. So it's just figuring out what you like. And now I am going to figure out how many stitches on either side of these markers I need. So I want a total of, just grabbing stitch markers. I want to end up with 20 stitches. So I'm not going to, I want 10 on this side of the green marker and 10 on that side of the green marker. So this is just going to have 1 stitch in it. This is going to be my second stitch. Everything after here, I'm going to put another stitch in. So 1, 2, then we have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Because after that pink marker, I'm going to work everything twice. So this 4 is going to turn into 8, 9, 10, because I'm just going to work this once. I keep saying work twice. What I really mean is I'm going to put an increase in there. I'm going to do the same thing over here. So I got 1, 2, and then we got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, we don't really need this green marker anymore, so I am just going to bloop, take that out. Okay, and I am going to, usually I would take my yarn and I would knit over to this spot. I don't really need to do that. I'm just going to slip my stitches until I get to that first blue marker. Okay, so I have all my stitches slipped now, and I'm going to grab my Barbie Girl yarn. And I'm going to start to knit just like normal until I get to the next stitch marker. By next stitch marker, I mean the next blue one. Sorry, I usually don't put these pink ones right here. I just remember not to work the middle however many stitches I've decided. In this case, it's 4. Usually I do, I guess I'm not working, or I'm not doubling a third of the middle stitches. Usually I do less stitches than that, but I don't know. For my first sock, that's just how I did it. Okay, so I've gotten to the stitch that's before my blue marker, and I am going to do a a right lifted increase right there. And then I'm going to pop that stitch back onto my left needle. And then I'm going to turn around. So this is a lot like a twin stitch. This is the twin stitch part. But if I was actually doing a twin stitch, when I came back to this, I would knit these together. I'm not going to do that. When I come back to these eventually, it's not going to be for a hot minute, so hold your horses. But when I come back to these, I'm going to work them separately. So now I've increased a stitch, even though most of the time with a twin stitch, that wouldn't be an increase. That would just be your double stitch if you're thinking in German short rows or whatever. But I actually do want those doubled. So I'm going to very purposely work it when I get back to it in a few minutes. Actually, usually when I do this, I mirror knit when I do short rows. And I'm not going to this time. I'll show you how to do it on the purl side, except for this, because I just remembered I hate to do this on the purl side. So, sorry. I'm actually going to turn this around. And I am working to the left, so I'm knitting backwards right now, but that's okay. And I'm going to do what is going to look visually to you like a make one right. It's actually a make one left because I'm knitting backwards. And I'm holding on to my tail right here because it wants to fly away from me. But I am knitting with this yarn on my left finger. There we go. Okay, now I don't even need to turn around. Look at that. And I'm going to work to the stitch before my last double stitch, twin stitch, make one, or lifted increase, whatever you want to call it. Loop. And here's that stitch now. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to do a lifted increase, but I'm going to slip it back onto that needle. I'm going to turn my work around and purl to the stitch before the last stitch. If you know that this stitch has a name, will you let me know, please? Because it's like in between a lifted increase and a twin stitch. I don't know what it is. It just worked, okay? So we're sticking with it. I'm going to turn this back around. I'm going to pull up that left leg. The reason why it kind of looks like a right lifted increase is because usually with the lifted increase, it visually looks like you're going down 3 stitches because you have your new row on your top needle, you have your old row below that, and then below that you have the actual leg of the stitch that you want to pick up. But in this case, my new stitches aren't here. My new stitches are on my left needle because I'm knitting backwards. Sorry if that confuses you, but I really just hate to do it on the purl side. So, yeah, you can go figure that out if you want, but this is how I'm going to do it here and now. And again, I'm knitting back to the stitch before, the one with the double stitch slash lifted increase in it. Should I give this a name? It probably already has a name. I'm not going to give it a name. Oh, I'll move my thumb so you can see. Twin stitch, new twin stitch slash lifted increase. Whoa. Okay. I actually really like all this shaping. It is more work, but it interests me. And also, I just like the way it fits. And if I just did like a German short row heel, I wouldn't like it as much. I wouldn't like the way that it fits because I don't always love the way a German short row heel fits. So I do the extra work because I like this. It might be silly, but that's okay. There's also the Flegel heel if you also want to look at heels that are more wedge shaped with like a gusset toe up. The Flegel heel is nice. It just doesn't have that classic look. Okay, this is my last double slit stitch slash lifted increase on that side. Oops, daisies. And this is the last one on the other side. So now if I did everything right, I should have 20 stitches on my needle. Now again, of the pink at least, okay, between my blue markers. Again, if you were doing this as a short row heel, you would count this as 1 stitch, but we're going to count it as 2 because I'm going to knit into it in a minute. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Oh, this blue stitch is another stitch too, so don't forget about that one. And then what I'm going to do is just knit. I've turned around. I'm going to knit on the right side all the way over. I don't really need this stitch marker anymore, so I'm going to take it out. And I'm going to knit into all of these. Oh, no, I lost it. Okay, here's how you fix that. Sorry, I was concentrating too hard to talk through it. I hope you saw it. We're just going to knit into all of these increases. Twin stitches, whatever you want to call them. Okay, until we get to the last one. So on this blue one, we're going to stop for a second. Sorry, I had to think about where my next color got connected. This is just add salt, by the way, and we're going to connect this in a minute. Before we do that, I'm going to slip the stitch and take the stitch marker off. Because I'm working with two different colors, I really don't need that stitch marker anymore. If I wasn't working with two colors, maybe I'd put a stitch marker in, or maybe I would put these stitches on the side on my circular needle, and I would grab a DPN to work the stitches in the middle, but we don't really need to worry about that. And I am going to join my new yarn. I'm going to knit my 20th stitch. That's my last stitch. I know it's blue, it's confusing, I'm sorry. And the first stitch of my gusset on my left side together. Okay, and now we are going to slip this back. It's all crazy because it is new yarn, but oh well. Then we're going to purl all the way back to the beginning. Oh, these are my double stitches from before. I'm just going to purl into them. Every single one of them. I am not going to purl them together like you normally would with other styles of heels until I get to the last one. Here we go. Okay. When I get to the last one, I'm going to slip it for a second so I can get this stitch marker off. If you were going to use that stitch marker, if you wanted it, you would take it off, you would slip the stitch back, you would purl this together with your gusset stitch, then you would put it back on, and that gets a little annoying in my personal opinion. So I'm not going to do that. I am going to flip this over. I'm going to slip my stitch. This is where my slip stitch pattern starts. Okay, so I slipped the first one. I'm going to knit this one, and then I'm going to slip, knit, 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 and now I have 2 stitches left. I always knit the stitch that is on either side of my last heel flap stitch, even if it should be a knit. And then this last stitch, I want to knit it together with the gusset stitch behind it. Every time I get to the end, I'm going to knit my last stitch with a gusset stitch. I'm going to slip, I'm going to turn, and I'm going to work in the opposite direction. All purl rows are purl only. All knit rows are a combination of either slip knit or knit slip. For Aya Partridge, you alternate those rows. So last time I did, I slipped the first one. I'm always going to slip the first one. And then I knit, and then I slipped. This next time, I'm going to slip the first one because that's what I always do. And then I'm going to knit, knit, and then I'm going to slip, knit, slip, knit, slip, knit, slip, knit, all the way to the end. Okay, so I'm back around to my last heel flap stitch. I'm going to purl that together with a gusset stitch. I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to slip the first one. And I'm going to knit. And then I'm going to knit again. If I wanted a regular heel flap, oh, and then I'm going to slip. So I had slip, knit, knit, slip. The last row went slip, knit, slip, knit, slip, continuing. If I wanted a regular heel flap. That's what I would do. But also I just really like how the Eye of Partridge heel looks. I think it looks cool. So that's what I do. Then when I get to the end of that row, I'm going to have a slip and a knit and then a knit together. And there we go. So, and then I'm going to purl back. So basically my heel flap is going to look like that. Like alternating those 4 rows where the first stitch is always slipped. Then I either do a knit, knit, and then slip, or I do a knit, slip, and then my backside row is always purls. When I get to the end of my row, I'm going to work one of my heel flap stitches with one of my gusset stitches until that gusset decreases. So I'm going to keep chugging away here. I'll strike the next row for you. But then after that, I'm going to go work this by my lonesome and come back when we reach the end of the heel flap. Okay, and then whoop, purl these together. Oops, that was knit. Here's a purl. Oh, I'm sure you've noticed by now, I'm a Norwegian purler. Sorry if that threw you off to begin with. Okay, so in my 4-row repeat, this is my first row where I'm going to knit and then slip all the way to the end. I'll come back when I'm done with this heel flap. Okay, so I have worked my heel flap except for 1 stitch on either side. And that's on purpose. I'm going to work this one, but then I'm not going to slip and turn. I'm actually going to grab my 80s rewind yarn again, and I'm going to knit around. And when I come back to right here, I'm going to knit those together. So let me show you how that'll look. I'm going to continue my slip stitch pattern. I'm going to knit these 2 together. If I turned, it would leave a gap, and then I would have to turn again, and it would leave a gap there. I don't want that. So I'll flip this over. I'm going to go back to my front needle. Haven't knit on that in a minute. I'm going to attach my new yarn. If you did want to do your heel flap and your heel flap and your heel turn in a contrast color, I would probably just leave whatever the main color of my yarn just right here so I could just pick it up and knit. But I'm switching colors, or if you never changed colors, which is generally what I do, I just don't switch colors, then you just keep knitting and you don't have to worry about joining anything or weaving in 5 bajillion million ends later. I don't like to weave in my ends as I go, especially not with yarn that's not as forgiving as this one. It just has really good stitch definition, so I feel like when I do the weave and Steven or something like that, I just feel like it's noticeable. So I'll go back and do duplicate stitch as much as I can later. Okay. Worked all the stitches on my front needle. Now I'm going to go to my back needle. I still have 1 gusset stitch that's not worked with a heel flap stitch. Okay, so now I'm on my back needle. And I have 1 gusset stitch that hasn't been worked yet. And I have 1 heel flap stitch that hasn't been worked. I'm just going to knit those together. Whoop, there we go. And then I'm just going to knit like normal. Now I'm back in the round. I'm knitting vanilla stockinette. Just normal sock now. If I had a stitch pattern, I would switch back to my stitch pattern at this point. Maybe, you know what, that's not true. I would usually knit an entire round plain first before I go back into my stitch pattern, or to start my stitch pattern on the back. If it's something more complicated than a rib, I'll do a rib on the foot, on the top and the bottom. That doesn't bother me. But it does a lot of people. Oh, I'm still connected. Okay, so sorry, you don't need to see any of this at this point. It's just knitting the round until your leg's long enough, add some ribbing, and then bind off. You're good to go. Toe up, heel flap, gusset socks. Boom.